Good morning to all of our homeschooling parents. My name is Susan. I'm with Homeschooling Supermom, so welcome to everyone. We have Devin with us.
Hi,
Devin
everybody.
is Devin is with How Do I Homeschool, and we have a special guest with us today that we are so excited about. And when we've been sharing in our groups, what today's workshop is all about, and it's all about calming angry kids. And we have a special guest who has written a book about calming angry kids. Her name is Tricia Goyer. So welcome, Tricia.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's great being here.
Well, we are excited to have you. I want to share with everyone a little bit about you so that they can become more familiar with you. Some may be familiar with you and some may not be so familiar with you, but it's so exciting to share in my opinion, your accomplishments, both in homeschooling as well as in the area of writing. Um, the thing that's so neat is that Trisha has dared to follow her dreams or her dream of writing books, and she has written over 70 titles,
Mhm.
and both in fiction, nonfiction, books for children and teens. Um, her whole goal is to empower women to follow their dreams and shares information about homeschooling, families, all kinds of great information. So I'm going to share more with you about her. Tricia writes out of her passion for God and her love for family and others. The author of more than 70 books, she writes both historical fiction and nonfiction related to family and parenting. This USA Today best-selling author has also won 2 Carol Awards and a Retailer's Best Award. She was also an ECPA Golden Medallion nominee and a Christie Award nominee, and won Writer of the Year from the Mount Hermon Christian Writers Conference. Tricia's contemporary and historical novels feature strong women overcoming great challenges. She creates historic wartime era, she recreates historic wartime eras with precise detail through comprehensive research, and is a beloved author of Amish fiction, as well, having written Big Sky and Seven Brides for Seven Bachelors. And so welcome, Trisha. I mean, it's so
Thank you.
impressive. So in addition to writing all these books and having all these awards, I want to share with everybody a little bit more about Trisha. And this is Trisha's family.
There they are.
Trisha is a homeschool mom of 10.
hmm
So Trisha, tell us a little bit about this picture. Let's get to know you a little bit better.
Absolutely. So I've been married to John for 31 years, and I was a teen mom before I met and married him. And it's during my teen pregnancy that I turned my life back to God and said, God, bring me someone that loves you and will love me and my baby. And he brought me John. And so we've been together 31 years. Our oldest son is Corey, and he's the one holding the little girl in the red. And now him and his wife have, yeah, there's Corey. They have 4 kids. So there's 2 in this picture. There's a little girl in the red and a little boy in the plaid red in the front. That's Corey's family. And then we had 2 more kids. We had Leslie, who's in the plaid in the back, red plaid. Yep. And her husband Hansa's behind her with a beard. And they are missionaries in the Czech Republic. He's Czech. She went over there as a single missionary, met and married him. And now they have 2 babies. So I was just in the Czech Republic 2 weeks ago, meeting my new second grandbaby. So they have 2 kids. And then our third biological kid is Nathan, who's in the green and blue plaid in the back. Yep, that's Nathan. And he's 27. He's finishing up at college. He's written a book. He's made 2 games for phones. He's very artsy and creative. So I thought we were done. As you can see, God had other plans from this picture. We ended up adopting 7 kids. So we adopted first from a private adoption from my mom, and she's the little one in the red in the front with the black vest, and that's Alyssa, and she's now 11. And then we adopted 2 more from foster care, so Casey's in the red in the front. Yep, and then Bella is in the red shirt and the black vest, kind of 2 over from him. Yeah, so we adopted them from foster care, and then I for sure thought I was done. And then we adopted 4 teenage girls, and then they had an older sister who had aged out of foster care, so we really got five. So all the black hair teenage girls around that photo are, yeah, there's one, and you have another one, and you have to have another one, and then one's kneeling in the front,
Okay.
and then Lily, and then the guy in the red and black plaid, that's Reggie, and they have two kids, and that's the one that had aged out of foster care that, totally, even though we officially have an adopter, totally part of our family, and they have the two little babies in the front. And then the one with the blonde, kind of twisty on her head, I started mentoring teen moms back in about 2002. And she was our very first teen mom that showed up at our meeting. She had Michaela when she was 15. And she basically adopted herself into our family. And even when we moved from Montana to Arkansas, she followed us down with her three kids. And so her kids are the blonde ones, the two teenage girls, blondes in the front, and then the little boy right in the middle. And so that's our family. Like we've added again four more kids. Corey has two more, and Leslie has two. And Corey's wife isn't in this picture, but Kat is wonderful. And then our Christmases are crazy. Usually, almost everyone is here. The presents, even if we only get a couple for each person, is like higher than the tree, and we have a great time. And I'm still homeschooling. So I started homeschooling when Corey was 5, and he's 32 now, and our youngest is 10. So I'm still in the middle of homeschooling. I've been doing this for 26 years, and we still have about another 8 to go. So this is like my
That's
second career is
amazing.
homeschooling.
Wow, impressive. So I have many questions, and as people who are watching, we also want to encourage you. If you have questions, by all means, do share that with us, because this is a great opportunity for us to ask Tricia all kinds of questions.
Hmm.
And we're going to focus in on our topic today of calming angry kids. But before we kind of get to that, I have oodles of questions that I would love to ask, and I'm sure Devin does too. But Devin's so used to dealing with me that I tend to ask oodles and oodles of questions.
She
So
usually asks the one I think of.
yeah, yeah. So first, let's talk about homeschooling.
Hmm.
What led you to homeschooling? Because you said your oldest, you started homeschooling him at 5. What
Yes.
led you to homeschooling?
Well, first of all, when he was like 3, I went to a co-op preschool, so I was there one day a week. He was there 2 days a week, but I was there one day a week. And what I saw there, and I'm sure every preschool is different, but it was mostly just like herding crowds of kids. And I'm like, this isn't what I pictured. And he was already like, by 3, he knew his alphabet. So he wasn't really learning anything. And I thought, well, this will be good socialization and playing with other kids. But really, it was kind of like, we're doing this activity. And then they get into it, and then we're moving to this activity. And it was just like, I don't know, that's not really what I pictured. And then we had friends from church who had homeschooled, and they had 8 kids, and but at the time I had 3. Corey was 5, and then I had a 3-year-old and a newborn, and I loved their teenagers. Like, their teenagers would interact with us. They would, when we go over for dinner, they'd sit and have conversations, and I'm like, I was not like that as a teenager. Remember, I was a teen mom. I was doing my own thing and not listening to my parents. And I remember John and I talking and saying, we want teenagers like that have that relationship. They were intelligent. We just enjoyed time with them. And so we went to our first homeschool conference, and I remember driving in. It was in California, and like all the minivans and the vans, and like I'm like, what is this whole new world? And this is probably 94. This whole new world that I never even dreamed of. And as soon as we got in there and heard the speakers and heard that like we can train our kids to love God and spend time with them, and tailor their education to the things that we think are important. We thought, okay, this is something that we want to do. And I remember ordering the big box of curriculum, being completely overwhelmed, being stressed out, had the toddlers, but we stuck with it. I've learned over the years how to do things differently, how to relax more, how to follow my kids' lead, and so many things I've learned. But that was really the beginning. First of all, being in the preschool and seeing this is not what I expected, and then also seeing the teenagers of our friends that I just love so much.
Wonderful. So that you talked about your first year of homeschooling and buying all that curriculum, and I can so relate to my first year of homeschooling, and I thought because I didn't start homeschooling until my youngest was in high school,
Hmm.
and I thought you had to buy all brand new curriculum, stick to the content of the book, things like that, um, and learned that some of that expensive curriculum I purchased wasn't working out.
Hmm.
And so, like you, I learned a whole lot that first year. So share with us, if you will, just a couple of tips that you would suggest for brand new homeschoolers.
Absolutely. Well, I think, the curriculum is so exciting when you get all the pieces, but I think especially when you're starting out, don't feel like you have to do everything, and definitely don't feel like you have to follow everything in the teacher's guide. And I've even written curriculum for like some more Sunday school curriculum, but I know they give you an assignment. Okay, we need this activity and that activity, and we need vocabulary words and all these things because they need all the pieces. But don't feel as a parent you need to follow all those things. And it really helped me. I ended up talking with a school teacher, and I'm like, I can't get through it. There's too much stuff. And she's like, I never get through all my curriculum either. We never finish the book. And that was like freeing, like, okay, I thought I was just bad because I was a homeschooling mom and we couldn't finish everything. And so over the years, I realized, like, if we're enjoying something, to do more of that. And if something's not working for my kids, they're not enjoying it, finding a different way to learn. And it really does take just trusting yourself and seeing that it works. And now I always tell people it's easy because I have three that have college degrees that have gone on that are, that are successful, and I never finished anything. I never finished a curriculum. I never did everything in the teacher's guide. So over the years, I learned kind of to trust the things and make them enjoy learning and love learning and follow those rabbit trails with them. And it really makes a big difference.
Wonderful. Yeah, so definitely have to relax that first year. I think all first time moms are so stressed
Yes.
and at homeschooling. So here's my next question. I gotta pull this wonderful picture of your family back up again and lead into my next question. All right. We talk about homeschooling
Hmm.
moms and that they are busy moms. And there is no doubt about that. But when, Devin has 5 children,
Yeah.
you have 10 plus children. I put it that way since you've accumulated a
Yeah.
few more along the way.
Yeah.
And so how do you manage it all? How do you manage homeschooling? First let's talk about how do you manage homeschooling with multiple children? What
Hmm.
what kinds of tips can you share with us there?
Yeah, well, the most I've ever had one time around the table is 7. Because my older kids were in college and stuff, so I've never actually had 10 around the table, but 7 is quite a bit. And when we had 7, we had from kindergarten till high school, all the way through. And so what I realized was I needed to find something that we can kind of all do together because I'm only one person. And the
Mhm.
4 that we had adopted had never been homeschooled before, and they had kind of like holes in their education too. So that was like in learning challenge, learning disabilities. So that was a challenge. And so I realized, like, I need to figure out how I can do as much as I can all together, because I was the only one me. And so we did a lot, for years, of a lot of read out louds. And we used at the time, we used Sunlight, which it's literature based, and we do like ancient history at the same time. And I had to read some of the little kids read out louds to everybody. And some of the older kids read out louds to everybody. And I knew by that time some of the little ones were like more focused on their Legos than actually listening. But they sat there and I let them color and paint. I mean, there's all these activities all around the table as I'm reading. But what I realized is they were all learning about good stories and times in history, and we'd stop and talk about, well, what does this word mean? So they'd learn about vocabulary, and we would do Bible study together. So that really was the key when I had 7 around the table, to do as much as I could with all of them together. And then we would do individual math, and we would do individual, like, writing and grammar. But I think the more that you can incorporate all those things, and like, again, we would be reading a historical novel that's, like, focused on maybe an 8th grader. The little kids, because I'm reading out loud, it's way above what they would be able to read, but they were able to follow along with the story. They got really interested in it, and so they were learning, and maybe not the same level as older kids, and just realizing, like, because school is in cycles anyway. There's ancient history, medieval history, modern
Mhm.
history, and then science is biology and physical science. they're picking up a little bit maybe at this level, and by the time they get older we could go more in depth. And so I just realized like I'm kind of teaching to the older ones, and the little ones are just learning and picking up. And like when my high schooler had to dissect a fish, was part of her science curriculum, all my kids are like there around the table as she's dissecting this fish. And so we're learning really to do absolutely as much as we can all together.
That is a great tip because, when you said when you only had 7 of them, I'm like,
Yeah.
it was hard enough with 1, so I know that, and then I admire Devin with 5, and it's like, only 7 of them. I
Yeah.
mean, that was wonderful information, so thank you for that. So on that note about how we manage multiple children, I'm gonna expand on that question also. So how do you fit it all in? You've written over 70 books.
Hmm.
You've been homeschooling, and we all know that no matter how many kids you have, life is busy as a parent. And the more children you incorporate into your
Hmm.
family, the busier your family becomes. So, how did you do it all? How did you manage writing books, homeschooling, and managing a busy life? What tell us a little bit about that and some tips that you might share with us also.
Absolutely. So I think one of the important things to realize is I started writing when I started homeschooling, kind of like right around the same time. So I started 26 years ago. So 70 books, I mean, it's still a lot of books, but it has been over the years. And I think usually between 3 or 4 books a year. Um, but my first book took 3 years. So, so first of all, realizing that, it's even though you look at like the end product now, I always wasn't as productive as I was. I was learning how to like follow my dreams the same time I was homeschooling my kids. And so in the beginning, I had 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a baby. And in the afternoons, we'd have nap time, and during that nap time, I had that 2 hours where that's where I would work. And so I didn't even think about like when it's homeschooling time, and the afternoon is my writing time. And I still actually keep that same schedule now. And I've noticed that when I give my kids focus and give them the time that they need and give them attention and pour into them. Then in the afternoon, when I'm saying, okay, I need to go work right now, I have a book that's due, I need to work on my computer for a couple hours, they're okay with it. Because I've just been pouring into them for like 3 or 4 hours in the morning. And I still kind of keep that schedule that I kept when I first started. And over time, when you focus and you dedicate yourself to something, it's amazing how that adds up. So, like I mentioned before, my first novel, World War II novel, took about 3 years to write. But it was that diligent every day working on it. And now, because I've written more and I know how to, write faster and know what to focus on and know how to like lay out a book, um, there's sometimes most of my writing gets done between like 4 and 6 in the morning. I have to get up early because I'm not going to have enough time in the afternoon. So really, but at the end of the year, if you put 30 minutes or an hour towards something that you want to focus on, that you feel is a dream you want to fulfill, at the end of the year, that's a lot of time. That can really add up. And so it's really a long picture thing that you look at this. But the busy family life, John and I, for years I did it wrong. My kids were in every activity. We were running from place to place. We were trying to do co-ops and all these things, and I was exhausted. And my husband actually sat down with me. He's like, "We need to figure out what our priorities are." And he's like, "We need to write down everything that you do in a week." And I'm like, "You do not have enough paper to write down everything." But we did, and he said, like, "What are you doing because someone asked you to and you don't want to say no?" And there were things I was helping clean the church once a month. There, I was helping cook on Wednesday at supper at our church, like different things that I didn't want to say no. And he's like, "We do not have time for this." And so we cut those things out. And we also decided then we want to make sure to have dinner as a family. So we don't do a lot of activities. We'll let our kids sign up usually for one a year. But mostly, like right now, our activity is Wednesday night church and youth group. And so the other nights, we're all there. We're all around the table. My little guy did do baseball in the spring, and so we're going to practices and games. But when we go to games, the whole family's there, so we're all there together. We're all cheering for him, and so we really, really limit down the types of activities and the busy things in life. And again, having older kids, I realize like they will, if they're interested in something, they will pursue it when they get older. I didn't start writing until I was in my early 20s. In high school, one of my sons taught himself how to play the guitar. My daughter would write music, and she plays the piano. She did some piano lessons, but she really, as she got older, became part of the youth band and learned so much from there. And so it's not like we have to make sure our kids do sports and music and art and all these things, but when they get older, the things that are natural to them, they'll pursue. My 27-year-old wrote a book. He wrote a novel that's published. He's written video games. He taught himself in his early 20s how to program video games. And it's these little games for your phone that are like totally family friendly. And he taught himself that. So I think sometimes we feel like we're a bad parent if we're not getting all this stuff into our kids, but just realizing like whatever their dreams are, whatever they want to learn, if we teach them to love learning and to be able to explore different areas when they get in their teens and 20s, they will do that naturally. So we don't feel like every activity is up to us to make sure our kids get into.
Yeah, I agree. You learn so much in those first few years of homeschooling. And going back to the new to homeschooling, because both Devin and I have a lot of new to homeschooling families inside of our groups.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, there's just like I was, I'm so busy picking out the curriculum, making sure we get through everything and making sure we stay in the activities and things like that. You learn so much in those first couple of years of homeschooling. So give yourself some grace
Yeah.
and relax, because it's all going to fall into place. So I loved how you said that, and I also loved how you kind of shared with us that routine is
Mm-hmm.
so important, that if people understand that, the morning time we do our schooling, and then at nap time, whether that's a child that's napping or not, that is our quiet,
Yep.
everybody's quiet time to kind of do their own thing. And then also, yeah, I think so many times we all think that we've got to do everything, get involved with everything for every child. But I think choosing what's a good fit for your family is also a fabulous tip also.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that. All right, so now I want to dive into this calming angry kids. Share with us about your book, Calming Angry Kids, and share with us about the book. And then also, can you share some tips with us to better understand how we might go about calming angry children?
Absolutely. Well, this is the book I didn't want to write because, to write about calming angry kids, you have angry kids. And really, it came from us adopting kids out of foster care, especially the older ones that have been through a lot of trauma. And I would say, I mean, with my first three kids, our first three kids, there was, the little tantrums and the little getting mad at siblings, but it came a whole new level when you have someone who's been from trauma, who gets triggered by things that you may not even understand, and then all of a sudden they're escalated and the other kids get escalated. And there's been times like one child's mad and then pretty soon someone else gets mad and everybody's mad at each other, and I'm like sitting there like, what do I even do in this moment? And so we've done a lot of counseling. We've got our kids into trauma counseling, and I learned a lot of good tools. So, first of all, I think one of the important things to realize is that if a kid is angry, it may be because they're mad. It can be because they're sad. It can be because they're anxious. There's a lot of things that comes with the anger, and anger is the easiest one to display. So they can be nervous about going to a co-op, or they can be not feeling well, but it all comes out as anger. And so I think the first thing we need to do is understand like what's really going on. And if they're angry, there's something going on in their mind, in their heart, in their body sometimes that is um, that we need to figure out how to address that. And so instead of getting angry ourselves, which I never was an angry person, and when I have teenagers going like whatever and like yelling, I'm like, oh my goodness. So first of all, staying calm and not letting ourselves escalate with that. Just taking a deep breath, releasing our fist, like calming the tension in our neck, and then saying, instead of saying what's wrong, it's really good to, and I learned this from therapists, to say you are angry. And they'll say, if they're angry, they'll say, yes, I'm angry because, and then they'll tell you. Or they may say, no, I'm just sad because you said we were going to be able to go to the park today and we're not. And it's just making me sad. And so then you could start a dialogue. So by just saying, like, you're angry, I could see you're anxious, by naming the emotion, it actually opens up conversation. And anytime their emotional brain is peaked, their thinking brain is turned off. So first of all, if your kid is crying and upset about something, don't think you can sit down and have them do school. Like, it'll not work. You will not,
Yeah.
as much as you sit there and say you're going to finish these spelling words, if they're upset, it's not going to get done. You're both going to get frustrated. So whatever's going on, realize if their emotional brain is turned on, if they're angry, upset, sad, anxious, any of those things, they're not going to be able to think. But by saying you're angry or you're sad, you're mad, then they'll say, well, actually, because my brother, blah, 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 it's moving from the emotional brain to the thinking brain. So all of a sudden they're speaking, they're communicating, they're telling you it's wrong. And so even if they're still mad, their face is still red, you're actually moving from that emotion to the analytical, and it's good. So then you could have a conversation about it. And I think sometimes we'll say, calm down, you need to stop that. You're going to not be able to get your electronics today. You're going to go to your room. And that just makes them madder because we're not hearing them or we're not hearing what's going on. So if we say, if they're mad and we say, you need to stop that, calm down, well, we never address that maybe their sibling did do something, or
Mhm.
maybe we did promise something that we're not following through. So by opening that communication, we could hear what's going on, and we could say, you know what, I am sorry. I'm sorry I did say that. You're right. That would make me mad too. This came up and it was unexpected. Then you could start having the communication. So you're moving it from just emotion to communication. Or sometimes they're legitimately like, a neighbor kid did say something really rude to them, and so they're upset, and that comes out as mad. You can say, I would be mad too if someone said that to me. Do you need a hug? I'm so sorry that happened to you. So again, we're not just jumping straight to discipline or straight to telling them to calm down. Because I know when I'm mad, and my husband would say, you just need to calm down. I'm like, oh no, like, you need to hear what's going on. And that's what our kids do. They're going to show you how really mad they are. But if you say, you're mad, and I would feel mad if that happened to me, and I'm so sorry that happened, if we're empathetic and we start having a conversation, it just really changes, and we're able to address the issue instead of just not listening to them and they feel like they have to show us how really mad they are.
Yeah, you're so right, because I know that when I have those moments and my husband says, "You just need to calm down,"
Yeah.
just like our kids, that I do the complete
Yeah.
opposite. It has hit my hot button, and
Mhm.
now you'll hear the thunder roar in our
Yep.
household because that was the wrong thing to say.
Yeah.
And you're so right. We oftentimes forget that the same kinds of things can happen with our children.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So tell us more about the book. What is inside the book? So I'm obviously some great tips.
Yeah, and really it is so much practical stuff. I mean, this is just like one thing. There's every chapter has just tips like that on what to say, how to address it, how to communicate with your kids, how to train your kids to calm themselves down. I mean, and it goes from babies, like
Mhm.
regulating them, all the way to teenagers, because I've had every level. Like, we've adopted babies, we've adopted teenagers, and like I said, even with our biological kids, I have stories about that too, because there were things that really would make them mad. I realized one of our daughters was super shy. And so when someone tried to talk to her, she'd like get mad and like hide behind me. And I realized, like, I just need to teach her how to communicate. When someone said hi to her at church or say you look pretty, we would practice at home saying thank you. And that's all you have to say. Like, just thank you. You don't have to get mad. You don't have to get anxious. You don't have
Mhm.
to hide behind me. And so it's not just for those who have adopted kids. All of us have kids that don't know how to handle their emotions. They don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to say I'm upset or sad. And so it goes through every age, and it talks about this age, these are some things you might see. This is how you can handle it. If you're seeing this issues in a child, this is another way you might approach them. And part of it is also kids just need attention. I remember one of our therapists was our 2.5-year-old that we adopted. He would just break things. He would push things over. He would dump things. And I'm like, what's going on? And she had me do this activity where 5 minutes a day, we'd have a special box of toys, and we would go in my room, and he'd get them out, and I would just focus on him. I would say, you have the red car, and she taught me how to repeat everything he said and to praise him. Thank you for sharing with mommy. And that literally 5 minutes a day of that focused attention, he felt seen, he felt heard, he felt appreciated. And because I was doing that, I learned to do it throughout the day too, to pay attention to him, to focus on him. And once I started doing that, not all of his behavior, I would say about 80% of his bad behavior stopped because he was feeling connected with me. He was feeling seen and heard and appreciated. And that really, because I was filling him up, then he wasn't having to dump things to get my attention or break things. And so again, all these different things. If you're seeing like this is an issue that I have with my kids, I'm sure there's something that can probably apply in this book because again, I've had all these kids and all these ages, and I've literally sat in the therapist's office and saying, "Tell me what to do. I know I've been a mom for 20 years. I have no idea what to do with this child." And so I've learned, and it's what I've learned, and that I really want to share with other parents.
I think that's wonderful. Because as you're sharing this and you're saying so much of it is practical and some of it we may know how to do ourselves, but sometimes we forget to take that step back
Mhm.
and read some great advice to kind of go, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, maybe we knew that or we didn't know that and we can manage to it ourselves, but we oftentimes forget how to take it from ourselves
Mhm.
to our children, or maybe it's an emotion we didn't experience, like you were
Right.
just saying, not you're not an angry person, and because it's an emotion we've not had to deal with, we don't know how to guide our kids
Mhm.
when they have those situations. So I love that it is packed with all kinds of great resources and scenarios to kind of help families out when they're addressing some of these different issues.
Yeah.
So, so thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited about calming angry kids and the different tips that are within that book. So on that note, couple of different things. One is how do we go about how would our families go about acquiring this book? Where can they go? What
Yeah.
what websites or stores or where can they go about getting this book?
Well, it's just like on all the online ones like Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com, any of those sites, it's going to be there. And then also I have my website, which is just TriciaGoyer.com. And if they use the coupon code homeschool, they'll get 25% off. So if they want a
Oh,
signed
nice.
copy and get it from there, and my 11-year-old is my shipping manager. So she loves when we get an order in because she gets to put it in the package and put the label on it and get it out there. So it's a family project, my online bookstore.
That's fantastic. What a great
Yeah,
way to get your kids involved.
absolutely.
I think that's wonderful. So, thank you, one, for sharing where we can go about it getting the book. And two, thank you for sharing with us a special code that homeschool families can get 25% off. So, thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Devin is used to me, and I'm so thankful for that. And so, my next question is going to be around this amazing book list. So, I have to show everybody all the listings that you can find about. Let me take it back. There we go. So, I'm not done. So, if you guys are curious about all these different fantastic
Isn't that
books
awesome?
and things that Tricia has written, you can go to her website and download the listing of books that she has available. And like I said, over 70 books or
Yeah.
70 books and
Yes.
amazing. And so you can go and check
It
that
is
out.
something for
But
everybody in the house.
yeah, so here's my question. Like all these fantastic books, I want to ask specifically, what would you consider your top homeschool books that homeschool families might want to check out, in addition
Yeah.
to Calming Angry Kids?
Yes. So I have one called Homeschool Basics that I wrote with the amazing Christy Clover. And Christy and I met speaking at the same conferences. And we realized like our talks were so similar because we have the same advice for families and, how to make sure you're focused on the right things. And we ended up realizing a lot of our blogs were the same, like not the same exact tips, but the same topics. And so we just pooled our resources together. And so it's called Homeschool Basics. And that's definitely like it's good for first time homeschoolers because it says this is what classical education means. This is what unit study means. Because I think when we all start homeschooling, there's all these terms flying around, and we're like, I have no idea what that means. And so all the things we've learned over the year, that's Homeschool Basics. I also have another book that's great for devotions for families. It's called Prayers That Changed History. And as a homeschooling mom, every time we'd come across this amazing person and anytime they prayed and something in history changed, that ended up I compiled all those together. It's a great book because it talks about a prayer from someone in history and it ties it back to scripture, a scriptural prayer. And so I've had lots of families say that they do that as a family devotional. I also have mealtime moments, and it's called, I think it's the new title is Wits in Mealtime Devotions, and that's what's focused on the family. And so on the front, it says it was written by John Avery Whitaker from Adventures in Odyssey, and it's a family devotion. And so that's another great one for families. And then another fun one is the Grumble Free Year. And so after we got through all these big anger issues, our family just realized like we were just grumbling a lot. We were just complaining a lot, especially we decided to try to go a year without grumbling on a road trip from Little Rock, Arkansas to Seattle, Washington. By the time we got there, I was so tired of the grumbling. I'm like, we need to do something. And so we told the kids, we will take you on a cruise if we will work for a year not to grumble, which, of course, nobody's perfect, but everyone was willing to work on not grumbling. And so we did. We took them on a cruise at the end of the year. We were planning it anyway. They had no idea. But, and so it really is just how to stop the grumbling and just appreciate what we have, appreciate each other instead of just always complaining about everything. And so I think that's another great one for families.
Yeah, that's actually one of those that I highlighted was the grumble free year that I wanted to ask you about that because boy, homeschooling or not, man, that does happen in the household, especially
Yeah.
no matter how many kids you have, that grumbling happens. And I love that there's a book, The Grumble Free Year, and how we can go about having that grumble free year.
Yeah, and the first 3 months, I thought, "Why did I decide to do this? Because it seemed like nothing was working." And then we learned, I mean, really just to be grateful from my grandma. My grandma lives with me. She's almost 92. She'll be 92 next month, and she broke her back as we're starting our grumble for year. And not only was I writing and homeschooling, I had to care for her in our home, put on a back brace. And I remember one day as we're sitting around the homeschool, and her room is right next to her homeschool room, I could just see her praying and singing, and she was so happy. And one of the kids looked at me, it's my 16-year-old, and she says, "Why are we grumbling and complaining when grandma's so happy and she can't even move? She has a broken back." And that was like a moment when we realized like we all can be thankful and grateful. And that was one of the things that really changed our home. So yeah, that book is like a journey, like, don't do this, don't do this. We tried to fix the kids by doing this, that didn't work. And then really how we grew in gratitude.
Yeah, that's good.
Wonderful. Great suggestions and information on books that we can check into and how to be obviously more grumble free and grateful. So I wanted to put this up here so that if you guys are wanting to find that complete listing that I showed you of all these great books that Tricia has written, you can obviously go to triciagoyer.com and see that full listing. And as she mentioned, you can go there and order some of her books as well. But very inspirational. So thank you, Tricia, so much for
Yeah.
It was
all
wonderful.
the information from today. We are so grateful. We are so excited to check out that Calming Angry Kids. Oops, let's see here. Calming Angry Kids, so that they know the book that we're sharing
Mhm.
with them today. And then you said Homeschool Basics, and then
Yeah.
also um, the Grumble Free Year. So
Yes.
I hope they go and check those out as well. There is a link above today's workshop that will take you straight to Tricia Goyer's website. So I wanted to make sure that you know that in both the groups. So it's easy access for everybody. If you want to go check out her
Yeah.
books, I highly suggest you do, because I love that they are just jam packed with resources. And again, I wanted to make sure that I shared a little bit more about Tricia here. And this is her wonderful and beautiful family. And again, Tricia, thank you so much for being
Yeah.
with us today
We
and
are
sharing
grateful.
all this
Thank you.
wonderful information. So thank you so much.
Yep. It was great being here.
Well, thank you. Thanks to all of our families that joined us today in our workshop. Devin and I are both grateful that you guys joined us. And again, thank you so much, Tricia.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.